Welcome to Tavern Talks, where we share our adventures in the tabletop universe. We're starting in a tavern where all great adventures start. We'll be your hosts. I'm Simon, that's Ben, and as always, drinks are poured, our tales are ready, and the tavern is now open. There we go. Another one in the books.
Okay. I just waiting to see whether, like the last two episodes, you don't introduce our guest or not.
I'm gonna make that your
Do you
fault.
like it?
Ben, I gotta have it in the notes. I have to write it down.
Three episodes in, and Bungo still forgets that
Ben,
we do this with
why
guests.
why didn't you introduce our guest? Now it's in written word.
With us tonight, none other than the man, the myth, the legend, the character creation generator himself, Mr. Mike. How are you, Mike?
I am great. How about y'all?
Pretty good.
Better now you are here in our tavern with us. I think a lot.
It's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I'm
like
sure.
a ghost.
You're
that
like
make
a
a good
ghost,
character.
a ghost that haunts the server with their ideas that pop into their brain at random points, which we all appreciate. I'm sure everyone has a lot of questions as to how you do it. How do you do it? I know that's what I've been wondering. Yeah, a bit of a DM focused episode this week. Rather than getting an active player on, or we wanted a week where we could address some more of the questions. We've been very conscious that we haven't got through many questions that you guys have sent in for us, and just because we've had things to talk about with other guests here. So we've got Mike in to talk about some of these DM-focused questions as well. I guess I'll run through recaps very quickly. I'm not going to go into drink drink check.
I gotta get a soundboard. Drink check.
Drink check.
All right, what are we doing today, guys? Mike, why don't you start off? You did it beforehand.
Yeah, all American Budweiser.
He's got a good old fashioned bud with him. There we go.
What do you
the
have,
red,
Bungo?
not the blue.
I went a little bit more.
Always red. Always red or red label. I like that. Classy.
And more north of Boston, northeast
Sam Adams.
of Boston in Massachusetts. Sam Adams. It's the Alpine Lager.
Nice.
I am. Yeah, you go ahead.
I'm designated driver. Drinking water tonight, unfortunately. Have an early call in the morning, so the last thing I want to do is not wake up. So yeah, some standard American beers. As
a black tea, Mr. Earl Grey over there.
No, I can't defend British beers for the most part. I will say that. Carlin is one of the British beers, and it's awful. There's some good like Italian beers that I like. Moretti is a good one. That's very nice. Yeah, beer is a bit of a weird one. I enjoy it in the summer, but beer makes me very sleepy, I will say.
Yeah.
Whereas if I drink spirits, it generally at like a slower pace, it generally doesn't make me as tired as I'll get drunker, but I won't be as tired.
Insane.
Yeah,
but
I feel that.
Let's head on to recaps. Which one do you want to start off? You want to go on the high seas, or you want to go towards the Citadel?
I think I started Thoughts last week. I'm gonna try and alternate them, so we'll do Sunless first this week. Again, only quick recaps. I think I spent a bit more time because we were trying to get people up to speed and talking to people about significant moments. There was combat in Sunless this week. My send-in summary is, and I'm watching you, Bungo. I'm watching you in post editing. Okay, right now. The party managed to break through to former party member Sam, and in the process claim possession of the wing of our Shardler.
Wow.
But
Good
it
for
was
them.
it was a bit of a big week, yeah. In the sense of what they achieved. So going into a combat that I didn't really think that was gonna happen. The week before they ended with like suddenly teleporting, trying to Cam gained knowledge of Sam's location, and they just jumped reactively, teleported to ambush this last shard, their last like sort of ditch hope. Which I get in hindsight. I guess I just didn't really expect it in the time. At the time, when I thought back on it, I was like, "Of course they'd try and do that if they've got the opportunity." You
Yeah,
know
I
what I
think
mean?
it's better to have overly cautious players than players who don't understand the urgency of what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
So
that was the best course.
yeah, exactly. So bit of a weird one in the sense of it was Sam and her imp Zagnab. Um, I explained this to some of the newer characters as well from Sunless because it's a reference. Sam is like one of those references that in this campaign that Cam, Buzz, and Tubia all have knowledge of, but maybe some of the ones that joined after don't. Sam was actually a player character when the campaign first started. It was one of the people that joined the campaign, played the first session, was really good, and then left the server afterwards. Just one of those random dropouts. I sort of made it that in the story they woke up, they didn't find her body. There was a message written in blood. Group didn't really find them in the immediate vicinity, and it went on. So recently, I've started bringing back that idea through one shots. Was the first thing they heard about it of like Sam coming back, and then this session with their characters actually confronting them face to face. So there's a bit of a callback in that sense. But I gave in because that was an old party member. We had a mechanic that I thought of and brought. Well, not really thought of myself, but like used based on other. I've seen other DMs use and tried to adjust it, which is this idea that the combat can be done throughout without having to actually fight and kill this person. So there was a level of Cam could try and do a persuasion check each turn, and then each character could use an action on their turn to try and add to that persuasion check. And if you used an action, it would lower the DC of what that persuasion check Cam would need to do to turn Sam sort of break that hold and bring Sam back to them, which they managed to do. A lot of cool roleplay, and they did manage to do it. So they now have this sort of cleric back on their side, and they also have one of the shards.
I think did you? I think I might have known about that a little bit as well. Did you do the same idea in terms of success and failures, like notches, like how many times they succeed in beating the person's check?
In what sense? Sorry.
Like somebody used death saves as like a reference, but basically they have to succeed 3 times in order to beat the person in a
Oh,
battle of words.
so no. So I sort of what I did was Aura as Vox Umbra has them this most chance being able to break this hold of shadows. He knows that it's things like his mother that would be trying to manipulate that force, and he sort of had. I gave him that intel that there was something a bit different and not as cold-hearted evil as the rest of them in Psalm. So it was a case of Aura could do a persuasion check. The DC was 30. Aura has a plus 10 to persuasion, which is great, but he'd still need to hit a nat 20. to hit that. Each action that a player used on their turn, there was no role that they needed to do. They just needed to actually tell me what they were doing, roleplay to some extent what they'd say. And that automatically lowered that DC by 2 for each person that did that. Then there was other things that you could do. So like if you used a spell in a certain way or managed to hit a certain thing that I thought would give advantage to Cam on that turn. So it ended up being on the last turn. It went from 30 to it got knocked down 3 times to 24. Then he also had advantage on the roll from someone casting a spell. And I allowed David to use his +5 channel divinity, which wouldn't normally work on someone else, on Aura for the persuasion check. So essentially, Cam then, it was about either killing her or building Cam's persuasion check to be able to bring her back onto her side.
Gotcha. I like that.
Yeah,
That's dope.
A bit more like I'll as combat goes on, I always try and find ways and mechanics to make it more interesting. Like this doesn't have to be a slugfest. There's other things.
Yeah.
Quick reference to that is I think that you took to Bungo in Sunless at one point was me purposely making that big map at Downforge and having all these things and purposely having a building that was close by full of gunpowder barrels. You know, when you leave those sort of things there, it's like little side things where it's like you can completely leave this and still complete your objective. But it's there, do you know what I mean? Or there's different ways to go about it. And that ended up being a big thing of you blowing just a fucking hole through the wall and all sorts and chaos ensued. It was great.
I went up half the tavern about like 80%.
Yeah, it was like a great play. It truly was. But that's why you add those sort of things in as a DM. I think like just little things to try and elevate or make the combat a bit more interesting than just your bog standard slugfest.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it for Sunless. Really.
Yeah. Also sounds fun. I would say speaking of Slugfest, that has nothing to do with it, so it's a bad segue. Thoughts? What's going on with the thoughts?
I've got to try and make that work. No, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
No. The recap for Thoughts is Flippin visits the Greasy Palm and manages to gain info from Secret Keeper Sari regarding an old acquaintance. Everyone but Arya goes out gambling. Okay. Again, I'm going to say this on film. I told him this before. Again, for the editing, Secret Keeper is one damn word. It's a title it's a position. Okay.
I'm just saying, if you added other extra words, then I'll also count those in.
Whatever you say, Ben.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm being called out. I don't like this. I'm going to start doing these recaps because I'm the only one that has to do them here at the moment.
It's one word. It's hyphenated.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but good session from Thoughts. We touched into base with Teradoro, which was a new place last the session before this, which I've been interested to sort of get off a vibe of like very Egypt, Arabia sort of vibed sort of city, very merchant, busy, bustle. One of the biggest, the biggest trade port I've made it in the whole of this campaign. Very lucrative place. A lot of the party did different things. Arya checking some stuff on some forgotten gods in the library. We had the session before this as well, Jackdaw, which is Buzz's character, finding the local casino or games house, the Rising Sun, which will become relevant in a moment here.
The animals might sue you for taking that name.
Yeah, well, come at me, animals.
They're probably like 80 right now, so they're just living out their retirement. Just leaving people.
Yeah, I don't think they get 'em. And I'll give it to them as well, right? Full disclaimer: if you want to come sue me because that is fully the reason why it's called the Rising Sun. The Rising Sun, if you listen to the lyrics of that song, is about somewhere where people go and lose all their money gambling and stuff. So it was like a very conscious decision. I use music a lot like that as a DM. So yeah, but they had a bit of a scout round last week anyway. Flipping this week, who has been to this place before, went and visited an old friend, Secret Keeper Sari, found out some very interesting bits of information regarding his very powerful one of a kind artifact that they may or may have not let slip through their hands at very early on in this campaign. And after a long sort of talk, Arya, not really, after not finding out what she really wanted to find out and wanting a bit of time to herself, decided to stay on the boat and fish, have some time to herself, while the rest of them went to the Rising Sun for a Liar's Dice tournament night, which is where we sort of ended the night as they walked into this very large games room casino owned by a satyr named Nigos, who, yeah, just a very extravagant sort of place that Jackdaw has now brought in for a 500 gold buy-in on a Liar's Dice tournament. So that should be a very fun next session to see how that goes.
Is it
With
what's the deal with using satyrs that run casinos? Because I have one too.
they just fit.
Yeah,
They really just fit that vibe. They really do.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I think it's. I'm very conscious. Like, I think, and this doesn't have to be the way you do it at all. I don't think this is even really good, but it's how I do it. It's like, oh, I've already had some characters of this race in my campaign previously, so I actively then try and switch it up and make sure I'm adding lots of different races to the world to know that, like, all these races still exist in the world.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's a conscious decision, like, yeah, this just fits a vibe, and sometimes it's like, well, I don't really have a particular race I need for this place, so like I'll just take something that's I haven't used yet. Like I used a bullywug as the tavern keeper for the first place, like, and
Great.
just out off the sort of shelf, and they loved it. So
I
yeah.
think it sounds like a light session, but I think in terms of like questions, I heard you did a Southern accent.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I didn't get to hear. I don't know if Mike got to hear it, but it would be
I
nice.
have not heard it.
If you have not heard it, that is a perfect time to turn around and say you can hear it on the Sending Station YouTube as it is recorded up on there.
Right here, right there.
I will say, I will address this quickly now as well. So people know, yes, I have a big backlog of editing to do for Thoughts. I have lost a lot of footage for, a lot of footage and recordings for Sunless, which really hurts.
Yeah.
Whether Sunless carries on being uploaded on YouTube for now is a bit dependable. I think I'm going to focus on Thoughts. Sunless will make it up there at some point, but it is not something I'm prioritizing. And editing in general is few and far between because I'm very busy at the moment. But all those that have asked me, yes, Thoughts recordings are on the way, and there are more coming to get you up to date with all the Terradoro stuff. But yeah, that is on me with the editing. I'm afraid.
I think it'll only be
Yes,
a few players that would call you out on that.
I did do a southern accent. Yes. Well, I say it's vague. I guess for me, it's everything's very generalized. For you, it's like the southern northern, but there's so many places in the south that all the accents are different. Do you know what I mean?
It's weird.
So I couldn't pinpoint wouldn't be able to say, oh, it's that state or that sort of. I tried to do just a typical more southern, what would be perceived as like a southern cowboy female sort of accent.
So, Texan.
Yeah, a bit more.
Yeah, I'd say that's
Probably more Texan. Yeah, probably more Texan.
It's probably like four
they say
different
mammoth
southern
syrup over
accents.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I've done a couple of different American accents at points. I think there was one that took you by surprise, if I remember correctly, at one point.
For me, I'm very careful about my British accent, not because of you, Ben, but because I don't want to sound like I'm forcing it. Like some when people do it, they sound very posh for no reason. Like it's
Okay,
like he's.
dude, I've never heard you do your British accent.
I haven't done it in a while. I could do a really good Aussie accent, but
Australian, I see. This is the thing. I think I'm pretty good at Australian, but I've never
yeah.
done an Australian character. It's really weird.
It's like one of the easy. They're so fun too. If you do Australian accents, they're so fun.
What do you? How do you do it, Mike? When you've DM before, are you a big voices guy, or are you trying to?
I am terrible at voices. I still try, but I'm
Yeah,
just outright. I oh god. I think for Australian it's always gonna be Steve, I think. What's Crocodile Hunter or whatever his name was?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Steve
always
Irwin.
like
Yeah,
yeah, Steve Irwin, there. But like other than that, I'm terrible. Sometimes I get like moments of gloriousness where it comes out perfectly, but most of the
Right?
time it's garbage.
To any DM who lives with a significant other, it's they might hear you like just practicing around the house as they're
Oh,
walking around.
plenty of times my wife has come up and just started laughing at me while I'm talking to like the group. I'm like, shut up. Like, come on, give me a break.
yeah. I second that. I second that, Mike. Um, I think since I've started D&D, my wife's definitely had to deal with a lot more of me just either doing voices or like just generally asking weird questions. Like,
Oh yeah.
I think I've turned around to her before and been like, obviously, like I've sat there and thought she's not gonna know what a kobold is, but I'm sitting there like, if you had saw like a small little dragon character go, what would you call him? And she's like, what, why is? But
I did
instead
the
of giving me an
exact
answer,
same
she's like, why though? Why is
thing.
it?
Mine just tries to say anything off the top of her head, and sometimes it lands. But most of the time, I'm just kind of sitting there staring, like I don't know if that works, but I like your enthusiasm.
The
She
worst time
had.
is during a monologue. Or if I'm monologuing, she just starts laughing at me. I'm like, oh.
No, I can't. I couldn't monologue in front of my wife because she'd rip the shit out of me to the point where I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well
There goes the
now,
doggy.
now my confidence in this being scary is just completely gone. And my players do that
Yeah.
to me in session enough anyway. Like I don't need my wife doing that before session.
That's weird. Um, but yeah, while we're keeping on the mood of ships, I think it's best for me to do the one shot info right now, so we can get to questions since I'm like.
Ooh.
So yeah, these two guys already know. They helped me with just some tips on what editing the thing should be. So you're gonna see it right now.
Nice.
But
Never seen this before.
yeah, okay. But yeah, I'm gonna post it
What?
right now.
Sweet mystery of life, at last I found thee. Ah, at last I know the secret of it all. All the longing, seeking, striving, waiting, yearning, the burning hope, the joy, and
But yeah, if I had to do my sending word of it, it would be jumping ship. A group of strangers get stranded on Beacon Island. While looking for help, they begin to uncover a mystery inside the lighthouse. That might be
Ooh.
24 words. It's less than 25, I know that much. But yeah, I think while I was reading up on Call of Cthulhu, not gonna lie, the combat is marginally better than mechanics wise. I enjoyed it a little bit more than 5e. We're just reading up on it.
Yeah.
Like,
So,
there's some. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, as someone who doesn't know I've heard of Call of Cthulhu. I know what it's
Yeah,
supposed to be like, but don't know anything about the mechanics. I know that you two probably know a bit more about that, given having a lot more experience outside of 5e to an extent. So yeah, what's Call of Cthulhu like in comparison?
yeah. I'll give it to Mike on that. Mike, how much do you know about Call of Cthulhu?
So I feel like, I mean, this is just like a summarization, but I feel like it's a little bit more intense because you're not playing these heroes. You're playing everyday people that have fallen into this mystery world or something, like that, and then you're fighting against these creatures of darkness who are constantly hurting your mental capabilities, and eventually, if you don't finish it, you you go insane
Like, indefinitely. Like, it might as well
indefinitely.
be
Yeah,
death. It might as well be death,
and
basically.
then your DM hands you a new paper and tells you to reroll a character.
So is it still a D20 system, or is it like, I know like a lot of systems are like 2d6?
This one
Yeah.
is a percentile dice, so it uses that
Mm,
Ah,
the Android system.
right, okay.
It's a little bit more math, but it's like a weird mix of being crunchy and not crunchy. I don't know how to explain it.
yeah.
Well, you better
There's a lot of versions.
better get better at that quick if
I
you're
know.
gonna start running it.
So like going back to combat, like it's so it's really stripped down compared to 5e. Like in 5e, you have certain things to do for certain situations, but
Right.
in Call of Cthulhu, they say before it's actually meant to be played in the theater of the mind combat.
Mm-hmm.
Never on
Yeah.
a battle map, but I also use a battle map because I think it's nice to see things. Like movement isn't
Mm-hmm.
calculated. You can say whatever you want, basically, and it'll just take place in your action. I think combat seems to move faster because of that. Um, but yeah, combat is very far and few between in Call of Cthulhu. For those listening, it's not a combat heavy system. It's if combat happens,
Yeah.
just one of you might die, and you have to make a new character. That's how intense this world is. um, but yeah, I'm planning to make it a two shot just to kind of extend the because we do 2 hour sessions here in Dragon's Bane server, so like on average.
Because
Yeah.
we're absolutely average people.
And then I
I
see
don't think
people on
I don't
Call of
think
Cthulhu. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't think anyone's done like a full like 6 hour like session or anything on the server. No.
Before the server, I was used to doing a 4 hour session. That's what I always stuck to. And then, or like
Yeah.
every 3 hours at least. But then once you have to account for time, people have work. I think 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
is the best, just
Yeah,
the sweet spot.
it's between 2 and 3 depending on how much I need to get through that session.
Mhm.
I try and
Yeah.
keep it to 2.5 as much as possible.
Yeah.
But sometimes it will stretch to 3 if I really want to push, like, oh, I really just want to get to this next little point before we stop, sort of thing.
I just want our players to know that we know some of you get a little tired when you try to push the
Mhm.
hours a little more. we can have sense your enthusiasm start to go down.
Special shout out, bless them, to Wisdom this week, who genuinely fell asleep for the last 10 minutes of the session. Also, I think because they didn't sleep the night before, bless them. I was not even mad. I was impressed that they managed to get through as much as they did. So big shout out there.
And to our blue collar guys, I know we have a few of them in the server. We know you do a lot of hard work, and then you just go and play D&D. It's rough, but thanks for toughing it out.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Dedication.
But yeah, exciting times. Exciting times. So when are you planning on doing that again, sorry?
Towards the end of the month. I'm
Okay.
definitely. I
So
think that'll be
look
a good.
out.
Yeah, look out both in information and in game. Um, I'll be. We're gonna do a session 0 before that, and the players who joined that, I'm thinking about kind of scouting to see who would be more interested in a longer adventure that I'm planning even further, which I've hinted at in the server, the Tale of Two Cities.
Is
So
that Call of Cthulhu or 2E?
2E will be in the fall, and I already have my story for that, but I will keep that hidden to build up hype.
Interesting.
We
Lots of
we
different
get the hype word right there. Hype.
hype.
Hype beast.
um, cool. I think that's gonna be interesting, especially that you like trying out all these different TTRPGs just to get your feel for them as well.
Yeah.
I
Oh
like
yeah.
that.
For those sending out server invites, make sure you just put RPG server now at this point.
We're
Not a
officially no longer just a 5e server because
yeah,
Bungo's moved to the dark side.
the dark side. Mike is sweating over there because he also had plans to try out other RPGs.
Oh my gosh, I have so many right now. I want to play so many different ones.
It's just learning the system is.
Yeah, that's the roughest part, and getting players to want to learn that system on top of that.
Yeah. I
To
feel
put
bad for any DM who wants to play GURPS, which you have to read 1,000 pages,
I've heard about
a
GURPS.
500-page player manual, and then a 500-page DM manual.
with how do you spell it?
Jeez.
GURPS.
It's
It's like
the
burp,
one
but
the
with a
one
G.
system that I found once upon a time a PDF to, and I cannot find the PDF to anymore. It's been locked down somewhere. Is the Borderlands based one, Bunkers and Badasses. It
I've
was
heard of it.
Yeah.
very good.
It's hard to find.
Very good.
Mike might have it deep in the crevices of his.
I might. My
his
Google
If you
Drive is
do,
full.
um,
but yeah, should we move on to questions right now or hot take?
yeah, go for it.
Questions
We'll go
first.
questions, and we'll round it off with hot take.
All right. So here we have some from like 2 to 3 weeks ago from you guys, and this was from Kotei. How would each DM handle multi-dimensional travel, and how do you feel it would affect the party? You gonna go, Mike? Yeah, we'll start with our guest. Guest first.
All right.
Multi-dimensional.
So multi-dimensional travel. So I feel like, I mean, we've all done it, right? Multi-dimensional, like moving to the Fey world and stuff like that. Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
So
I guess
I
it
mean,
depends how much you want to extend to it too, don't you?
yeah. So I feel like it's pretty common in D&D to travel through different dimensions. I mean, certain dimensions have certain requisites, like, sometimes you can't breathe in that dimension, or sometimes time stands still, or 100 years might pass, and then you come back and the whole world's changed. So I mean, I feel like it really just depends on where your destination lies.
I like that because and I don't know. Ben's already done his Feywild arcs a few times, but for me,
Mm-hmm.
whenever I did a Feywild arc, it's I don't know how to explain. It's something inspired me about it, but it's the moment they leave. To them, it felt like a dream, and it just kind of
Mm-hmm.
felt like they just teleported to a random spot in the world. And only when they go back to the Feywild will they retain their memories again, like of what happened there. That's probably
That's
my
interesting.
favorite stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's like an option. It's like optional rule in the DMG. It's like
Mm.
but they have to roll for it. But I decided to keep it as like a story based style.
Oh,
But
okay. That is cool.
it's really I think it might be it's an anime movie definitely. I feel like I can't remember what it was. Okay, I don't know. It could be Narnia. Who knows? But
Well, it kind of feels very Spirit Away coded where
Right.
she goes in and then it comes out and it almost feels like a fever dream that she went through
Right.
the
Yeah.
whole thing.
I'm trying to remember what inspired me. But yeah, go ahead, Ben, if you want to take on this question.
I have done this. I've done one Feywild arc in Sunless. But I don't know, I feel kind of very torn on my answer here. I've tackled multi-dimensionalities in the same way that I've tackled the material plane insane. In the sense of taking the essence of what that plane is about at the core, but then changing it to how I need it to be for that campaign. Because there's a reason. Ooh. There's a
I'm
reason.
back.
I was gonna say Mike disappeared. He went invisible for a second. John Cena this.
For me, he's just frozen. He's just looking at you, Ben, like with anger. Just
Yeah.
Whoa. He just flipped.
I think a good example of the one thing that I changed is the astral plane for me. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure 100% how it works or supposed to work in D&D 5e lore, but for Sunless, it is an exact replica of Eldamar, the material plane in the astral plane, but in a very abstract way. So things that are built underground and deep underground actually form towers in the astral plane. It is almost like there's trippy bits of abstract and surrealism elements where things work in opposite ways, but generally I wanted it to be a mirror. Multi-dimensional travel, if we push it further, I think is always a good opportunity to break from whatever's going on in the material plane and go, okay, well now we can have some shenanigans or a side arc, or we're going to go off and do this and do something completely different. That's the whole point, I guess, is make the most of it because they truly are supposed to be different places for reasons. So I'm not saying by any means why me doing a mirror of the astral plane for the material plane, because I think that's probably kind of boring for what the astral plane could actually be in the endless scheme of things. I think there's much better opportunities out there. But again, I'll always come back to Sunless. I made a lot of decisions as a first time DM that I look back on now and go, yeah, I'd do that differently. Do you know what I mean? It's all about learning, and I'm the first person to admit that. So, I guess just embrace it, try and have fun with it. Those things are trying to
Dimensional.
be like core at the core of it. They're supposed to be fun things, aren't they? You travel in space, traveling the Fae, hell, wherever it may be. I mean, because you've got, I was going to say you've got stuff like DOA, Descent into Avernus, DIA.
Yeah.
I think I'm all for it given a good reason.
Yes.
And I think it's also a good thing to maybe start a campaign round is like just that idea of like a multiverse or something like that. But I think it's definitely interesting.
For me, I'd say this question should be answered in the session 0. How much multidimensional travel would be going on, and how much how much freedom they have to go to these dimensions, in my opinion. And how accessible they are.
I think
I feel like it depends.
For me, I think it's because I had a few moderately high level adventures already, and some spells can already move you through different dimensions.
Oh yeah.
So for me, the fact that the players can already move, like maybe not even later levels, like mid to high levels, to wherever they want, and you as a DM, you kind of have to prep in the last second what that area looks like. You have to read up on on the lore beforehand. So if they say they want to go to the Earthen Plane, if they want to go to the Astral or whatever that is,
I think
Well,
my thing is with the session 0, it's very early.
mm,
Is if we had a session 0 for Sunless all that time ago, and they turn around and said, "Is there going to be any extra planar or multi-dimensional travel in this campaign?" I would have turned around and said no. But we've been to the Feywild because it's not the focus of what I've got planned for the story, but there's very possibly that thing that we can. I think it's open to leave it to the table, but I think if it came up at session 0, like a player actively asked, "Are we going to be doing it?" I'd always say there's a possibility, but I'm not going to say yes. There's a bit where we're going to go here. That's not the case. It's open. I think it's just leaving it open.
Also, let me put it right here over where Craig is. The map that they give us for the planes in the DM guide or whatever it is. It's complicated. It looks complicated.
it's very complicated.
There's like a river
There's a
that flows
lot.
through everything. You
Yeah.
know, you could take it through different areas.
There's a
It's like
lot of different
yeah.
planes.
So, but yeah, that's a good question, Ben. You want to me keep going, or you want to go do wisdoms next?
We can do wisdoms. Yeah, wisdom gave us a question after they guested last time. If I can just pull up the question here. So again, I mentioned this to Bungo briefly beforehand. I think this is mainly aimed at me at the moment, but I think it's still weighing in on how you would deal with it and if you have dealt with it before for both of you. And the question is it hard to keep group expectations separate when running more than one game? So we mentioned in Tavern Talks about last time not being able to kill the Sunless characters at 13 and that being nearly impossible, but nearly one shot in the Thoughts characters at level 3. I
Well,
think
oh, yeah, you
this,
go.
I was just going to say, I think this splits into 2 parts,
It is, yeah.
which is the power gap between when we're talking about nearly one shot in a party and nearly TPKing to, and then being really fragile to them being really strong at level 13. That isn't a conscious decision by the DM as such. That is, no matter how hard we try, the system is built like that. That is power
Yeah.
scaling in the system. You're going to be weaker at that point than you are at that point. Then it breaks into the fact of managing expectations of 2 games at once, which I think is very valid, but not because of the level gap. It's because of few factors around how you run both campaigns. If you run 2 very similar things, it's going to be very hard for you. I think because things start to mesh and mold. For me personally, Sunless is a very serious and a campaign at this point and very epic. Thoughts has been a lot more fun and light-hearted. Pirate by nature, in my opinion, should be a bit more fun, light-hearted, a lot of hijink. Serious at points, but overall, it's not like there's always this pressure and story as much as there is with Sunless. So I think it's about how you differentiate the 2. It is difficult at times to sort of bear in mind, you know, the themes of both. Character names get lost in the wind as a DM, unless you've got your DM, your like notebook with them all right next to you. Because I tell you what, learning all of the characters for one campaign is enough. Every NPC you mention, if you're trying to do it for 2 campaigns, you really start to struggle. I'll tell you that much.
It's
Yeah.
easy if you number them 1, This is number 2. This is number
Yeah,
3.
just thing 1 through a million.
They don't use names anymore.
So yeah, I think for me the reason why I do it, yes, it's hard. It is hard, and I think trying to run 2 campaigns at the same time is it's demanding. But the reason I personally do it is because it's very rewarding. I know what I'm able to do to my limits, which is going back to the like the editing things. I know where my limits are in terms of what I can do each week physically without draining myself. So like
Yeah.
I always have a conscious thing on it. But I like the challenge of it for me personally. But how do you two feel about this? Have you ever run 2 games at the same time? How did you differentiate it? Or if not, how would you?
Mike, you
Hmm.
want to take this first?
I
Or
don't. I have ran multiple games like coinciding, but it was always like usually with the same group of people, so it always felt similar
yeah,
but also different. Like because it really just depends on also how the group runs. Like if they play the same characters every game, it's never gonna feel different. You're
Yeah.
you're in different scenarios, but the characters are playing the same character. So it's like watching, you know, an actor who plays the same character no matter what movie he's in.
Yeah.
It's the same movie. There's different explosions, but so I don't know if I really have any experience in this per se, but and I want to add on to what you were saying, Ben. Like you were saying, one game's serious, one game's a little bit more playful. I feel like that helps a lot because
Hmm.
you probably feel like there's more to lose TPKing the serious game. I know you wouldn't prevent
Hmm.
it, but the people, they would be a lot more sad compared to like the playful game. If you TPK them, that could
Hmm.
open up a whole new quest.
Exactly.
Oh, now you're doing this. I don't want to give away any possible ideas, so I won't say nothing. But it could open. It could.
Yeah.
I mean, and you could do that for either one, but for the serious games, it would sullen the game a little bit. I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think you just have to be that's the thing. You just have to be very careful when running too. Be
Yeah.
mindful of it. But again, it's always about I think as a DM you need to assess what's best for you and like what you can actually handle. Like if
Yeah.
you're running are you a DM that wants to homebrew a world? Are you a DM that wants to run modules? Modules are going to take a lot more time for you to just read the source book to start off with, but then you're going to be good to go for the most part. Homebrew is going to be something where you're constantly going to have to be working on this from week to week, just based on what the people. Okay, I
That.
now know that they're interested in this. I need to start building more on this. I need to. So
Yeah.
I personally do that anyway. It fills a lot of my free time, and I enjoy writing. So I do that anyway. Um, so I can use that, but I don't think it's for everyone.
Mhm.
I really don't, and um, I think that's something that everyone should sort of take on because I think you need to be fair to your players. It's better
Oh
to
yeah.
have one group of players that you're really committed to and they're doing a good job and they're enjoying things, then try and do 2 and juggle things and have it sacrificed and one of them start lacking.
I think
Yeah.
I think for me with that is if I had to strip the question down a little more and just the question is about player expectation. How do you manage that? Going back to it, it's definitely the sessions era. That's when you
Hmm.
tell your players of what the vibe of the campaign will be. If you're going power fantasy, if you're going for political intrigue, if you're going for a civil war or something like that, or I forgot any other genres, a noir. Uh, uh, that's when you try to let them know what to expect. But if you're gonna do
Hmm.
2 campaigns, Most of you
Yeah.
guys, yeah, I think with 2 campaigns, you guys knocked it out of the park. I think try to keep it as different as possible. You know, we're gonna put the word up here, theme. The theme of the
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
campaign. That's where everything kind of circulates around. Um, as long as you keep that within the heart of it, what the core of the game will be about, then it will be different, maybe in subtle ways, maybe in bigger ways, depending what the theme is about between the 2 campaigns. Um, but yeah, you think that's
Yeah.
a solid answers for that question?
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to do one more and then we'll do hot take?
Yeah. You want to do buzzes or DJs? DJ is more of a character question. Maybe to Mike with about character creation, or buzzes, which is. Oh wait, no. I think that question was to Mike.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think DJs was specifically to Mike based on the fact that we said about character creation questions.
Scroll up.
Buzz, we will get to yours, but when you ask for a 5-part answer question, we have to think about it a little bit.
Well, we
Buzz,
are
if you want
doing.
your question answered, tip us $20.
Is there
Yeah.
a cash app? There's a cash app right here.
Oh, do you know what?
Mhm.
I'll do this live in the recording because Mike. I actually haven't done this with Mike. Mike, look.
Oh
Oh
shit!
shit!
That's
You guys
awesome.
wanna let them know what the deal is with that ship?
Oh, yeah. So Mike, this was a present from Mike to me. Thank you very much, Mike. This
Yeah, no
is a
problem.
little pirate ship that bobs, and it is now what I'm calling my little replica of the Cordelia, which is what the
Mm,
Thoughts crew have named their ship in the
I
campaign. So
love
now I
that.
have a little ship to have my little ADHD fiddles with while
Nice.
I'm thinking about stuff.
All
Um,
right. Let's see here. You want to do Buzz question or DJ's question first?
well, let's go to DJ's question.
Yeah, DJ's question is a little bit quicker. We'll start off with Mike on this one. I'd like to
Okay.
submit a discussion topic: character creation inspirations. Where did you get the inspirations for your absolutely favorite character build? Whoa,
Oh, my favorite character build. Oof.
this is good. I think there's new
Okay, this
campaigns
is
and
good.
yeah. So I think this might help people to figure out what they want to do.
I don't. I'm just thinking of all the. I've made so many, and as a DM, you become the ultimate character creator. So my favorite character build. Oh, I have so many things I could talk about. So I'll just start off with this. A lot of my characters' concepts are on a whim. Anything, yeah, it could be anything. Could be inspiration for characters. It's crazy. When the creative juices are flowing, it's just I pull it from books, shows, life.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a piece of bread flying through the sky. Now I have a sentient bread character
Yeah,
concept.
yeah.
And but I don't know. When I think about my favorite characters, it's probably always my first one. And back then, I play a lot of humans now, but back then I was really against human characters. I love playing monster characters. So my first character build, but see, it's really hard to talk about that one because it was 3.5e, and it was
Mm-hmm.
like this crazy, overpowered, like off the wall homebrew game. But he was a treant, but he was like a fighter, so it's hard to talk about that. So like, because if I
I
discuss the build, nobody would understand. So I'll go with something simpler. Mm, I did the Sunless Citadel as well as a game, and I had a character. He was kind of an edge lord, but he was a lot of fun. His name was Francis. He was a paladin, and I I really don't know what I got his information for him, or like how I got the creation for him, but he was, very dark, moody, how a lot of people make their characters. But it's really hard to pick one, my
I
favorite. I love them all. They're all my children.
I think what sticks out for me for you is there's always a quirk with your character. There's always something where you read it and you're like, oh, this seems fine, and then you read the last sentence and you're like, oh, of course, like
Oh,
of
I
course,
love
yeah.
yes.
It's that sort of thing. I think that's you got a great mind for like. I think if you think of a quick character concept from something that you see, as you say, and then you have a really good idea of, oh, now I have a backstory and like a whole character idea on how he gets his powers and how like it all
Oh yeah.
correlates. And I
I
think
love backstories.
that's really good. Bunga, what was your favorite ever build?
As a forever DM, I only had 2 official characters
Okay.
within since I started playing in 2018. My very first one was Kane, which you guys might have met in the duels.
Mm-hmm.
And for
Slippery
him,
bastard.
I don't think I killed you a few times, Mike. Uh,
Kind of.
but
And me, don't worry.
for that one, like Mike said, our first character is a little bit edgy, and
Mm-hmm.
for him, I was reading Preacher and like other comic books at the time. Like, if you guys don't know how it's like to write or try to like keep the juices flowing, as you write, basically, you're just looking everywhere for inspiration. And for that
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
time, I was big into Preacher. I was big into like what's his name? Uh, the guy with the motorcycle and the skull face, flaming skull.
Oh,
Oh, Ghost
are
Rider.
you talking about
Ghost.
Ghost Rider?
I got into a bit of lore with Ghost Rider, so I wanted. He struck a deal with the devil because he's a warlock, and he has to pay for his soul back by killing uh, certain evils in the world. And that one was a favorite of mine. And then my most recent one was Kuma, and
Oh yeah.
for him, this is the thing with inspirations is that you never turn it off. Kuma started off with I just wanted to see how a character would be within insane range. So he's a bugbear and he has a glaive, so that's already like 10 feet plus a 5 feet, or like so he has like 15 feet range and he has sentinel, and I want to try that. And then as I continue to play, I got a bit of Uncle Iroh vibes from him, where he only drinks tea. A little bit of Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like the street captain.
I can say that for sure.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So yeah, like I said, just never turn off that inspiration switch. Your character might change
Mm-hmm.
as do over
Oh
time.
yeah.
So just keep the juices flowing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if your character doesn't evolve through the game,
Mhm.
it, it's either you aren't trying to play or you're just not being stimulated enough in the game itself, you know? Like your character should, just like any story should grow
Mm-hmm.
or be murdered by the DM.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, before we head out to bed to answer this question, I just want the listeners to know that yeah, I did forget to press record on the OBS to have our faces. So we do have
You
audio.
absolute idiot!
We do have
Oh
our
no!
we do have our audio.
All
I
right.
only remembered halfway through Mike's answer. I'm like,
Oh, do you know what? I'm not even mad. You've got such a massive editing job to do to try and fill that gap,
I
mate.
know. I'm already thinking about how many stills I'm gonna use for different emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's
yeah,
Um,
all right.
when he pointed, I just realized when he pointed at Craig, that means that they didn't know. But the picture will be on there. Everything we spoke about.
uh,
Don't worry, guys. We salvaged this one.
amateur.
Go ahead,
Um,
man.
favorite character build, and where did I get the inspiration? Two. I'll say that as someone who DMs more than they plays. Um, I have played a few characters, but with whether they're in one shots or just a few sessions so far, and I haven't had much time to develop, I won't really count them. So the two main ones for me, there was Marty McFly No, Marty McCaw, who was based a bit on Marty McFly, but also this basis of just a bard that was famous, but that idea of like just drunken depression and not liking who you are at the core of it. Like there was a bit more, he was like a comedic character at like the face of it that I wanted to have a bit more of a darker thing mentally in his own head, which didn't really like it started to play into it towards the end of Caravan of Brie, but didn't really get to address as much. But I really like the idea of Marty, and I like the idea of like this hopeless bard character. I think I'd be a bard in real life, so I really like bards. The other one of my other favorite characters.
That's
What
what I
was
shot
that?
for.
That was
What is it?
Cayman Jack.
Moscow Mule.
Ah, right. Okay. Ready to drink. Oh, right. Okay.
I love mules. The ginger beer is really good. But yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Uh, the other character was Hope. Here's the weird thing when it comes to inspiration. It's no stranger. One of my favorite classes, anyway, is cleric to play. I think they're very versatile classes. I think there's a lot to them. What's interesting is, and this is the one thing that always conflicts me when I play clerics, no matter how many times I play them, is as a non-religious person, as someone who is atheist. Well, I'd say probably more agnostic in the fact that I don't really believe in anything. I just believe there's probably things out there that can explain stuff. I'm just not going to choose what that is. I think for me, it's very hard to have this full on acceptance of I'm going into this with a cleric that loves their god. And Hope was the first one where I was like, I'm gonna let this happen. Even as a non-religious person, like I'm just gonna go with the fact that for once, like this cleric is gonna be like somewhat impacted in with her religion to a point where she's faithful to it, but she's got questions and there are problems there still. We had that thing with Aminator and the light sort of going with Hope and her trying to investigate that being the core of that religious sort of thing. But I think it's very interesting because there's a lot of ways that I can think I've found to be able to play clerics where with the DM on your side about it and with their approval, you can make it very much like a paladin in the way that you can draw from a non-deity and another source in other points. But yeah, I think I very much like Mike though will come up with an idea and then try and for a character and then base what the class is on that idea. What I think the idea would be. Like base the personality of the character, then get a class for them.
Yeah,
Is how I think.
Yeah,
Go on,
that's a
Mike.
good idea. I was gonna say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, you're
But
good.
actually, I have two characters I made once that are related. They're both bullywugs. One was a psionic, but the other one was a paladin. And they're just I played them both simultaneously in different games, but they were both related, and it was just a lot of fun. But I feel like for me, I really don't. I create this character, I make a backstory, I pick a class, but when I start playing as that character, I really don't know that character until I've played him for a little bit. I don't feel like I really try to get into the mind of that character. That character isn't me. That character is his own person, his own world, and it's a lot more fun when you can really immerse yourself in the world, not as yourself, but as somebody else.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think
And I'm
that's
also
happening?
crazy.
Yeah, we know that. You think I have enough time for buses, or should we hop into hot takes?
I think how do you know how long the recording's been going?
I don't know how to check Craig. Do you know how?
Yeah. You absolute amateur. First the OBS, now Craig.
Okay, it started at 9 apparently, so it's been an hour and 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're at an hour. Okay, I think let's go into hot take. We can keep buzzes so that we've still got a question going forward. We do have plans to have some more DMs on in the next couple of episodes if we can get them on. That's down to me actually being the PR rep and going and speaking to people.
Unofficial PR.
An official PR rep. So we can answer Buzzy's question soon. I know which one that was. Hot take this week on my turn this week as we're alternating is actually not brought to me by I think we all sort of decided this week, as we were sort of discussing before, very good idea around the idea of railroading versus active storytelling.
Mm.
Like, I don't know if you saw the last Tavern talks, but one of you has to pick a stance. And even if you don't believe it, you'll try to defend it as well as you can.
I will
Okay.
I will you can pick a stance on this, and even if I disagree, I will argue for the other side. Even if I
Okay.
disagree with all my core, I will try and argue from the other side.
Well, I'll make it easy for you. I'll pick railroading, and you can have active storytelling.
Okay, how are you gonna? So, talk to me. What are your thoughts on this, Mike? In terms of railroading, the
Well,
idea of
I feel
and
like
concept of railroading.
I guess I feel like railroading is it's definitely a negative concept, right? No one, and I'm supposed to defend it. No one likes railroading. No one, except for, God forbid, a bad DM. No one likes railroading. I've played in games where railroading was the only concept in the game, and it's not fun. You have no choices except for what they make you feel like you have choices of, and you end up being turned down. But I am talking about like something different. I feel like every game you have to get to certain points. So eventually, you have to push the narrative, even with the concept of open world, open ideas, open choices. Like eventually, you have to choose a point in that story that has to happen, or your story is never
Mm-hmm.
told, and then your characters are just going to end up, derailing the game. I mean, we wouldn't have the concept of derailing the game if we didn't have railroading. It's two sides of the same
Yeah,
coin. You
yeah,
know, and I
I
feel
agree.
like it's hard. It's hard to balance it out. It's a balancing act of everything, but
I've
railroading is an important function.
Yeah, 100%. I feel I know I'm supposed to argue against it, but I think we're hitting onto the same sort of thing, which is that there's a level which I will say this is probably one of the hardest things, apart from like trying to balance combat. This is one of the hardest things for a DM to do. And the way
Yeah.
that I have sort of got to the conclusion in my own head is you as players, when you come to a table, you have a character and a story that you want to tell with this character. That's the general idea around D&D, right? You want to explore this character and be able to tell a story of this character's life and what they've gone on, right? You have a story you want to tell. There are 5 people or 6 people, however many at the table, that bring these stories, right? The DM's job is to merge those stories, but the DM also has a story they want to tell. They're not bringing a character to the table. They're bringing a bigger story as well that they want to be able to tell. This is my setting, XYZ. This is the sort of thing that I want to go on. The balancing act is between making it fun for the characters still, that they're doing what they want to do, that you're not making the decisions for them, that they still have the freedom to make their own choices, as Mike said, but still guiding them to these small points that you have to hit story wise. So, going back to thoughts this week, having after session, a couple of players mentioned to me that this whole thing about back at level 3 when we first started in the very first encounter, there being a reference to something now, which much later on they found out they let slip through their fingers as it is a bigger, grander scheme thing going on over here. They all appreciated, like, oh, the hind, like, you must have put that in very early on. Yeah, well, that's a symptom of active storytelling. I have a story that I want to tell, and I will piece little bits in along the way while you do your own thing. And eventually it will all come together. I don't think it's good to go, no, my story says that you have to be in this location at this time, otherwise it doesn't work. I think that idea is bad of railroading. But I think
Yes.
some players will be too quick to jump on the fact that a DM is railroading because maybe they didn't get the outcome that they wanted in a scenario. Now, I might get a lot of hate for that, but again, there's a very tight line that the DM has to walk on a session by session basis of
Yeah.
giving the players what they want, but not fucking up what I've got behind the table and screen here as well.
That's right, players. You don't get what you want.
You never get what you want.
Get
It's
what
me.
I
It's
give
me.
you.
This is my game. No, I mean, it's thinking.
I
Yeah,
I know it's a hot. Yeah.
go on, Mike.
We have one more point, Mike.
Oh,
We usually have 2 points for
oh,
for
two
this.
points. Okay. Well, it's kind of hard. I feel like we're kind of agreeing, but also disagreeing. Not really disagreeing. We're kind of agreeing on the same thing, but with different points. I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
add that it makes it. A good DM has to work harder. You know, to avoid the characters feeling railroaded or active storytelling. I feel like I said, I feel like it's just the same thing, different but done differently. But like
Mm-hmm.
a good DM has to, if they're trying to get their points across, they have to, they have the characters have all these choices of places to go. If this next point has to be made, then you're making that point 20 different times
Mm-hmm.
because it can happen here, it can happen here, it can happen here, because regardless what choice they make, that point has to happen. Not every point is like that. You can
Mm-hmm.
have the randomness and the fun and everything else. I personally love random combat tables, but I love combat. But beside
Yeah.
that, oh, you found a Tarask, yay.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, so a good DMs, I feel like, still railroad to a point, but maybe we're just calling it two different things. But and I will agree though, Ben is also a master storyteller, so active storytelling for him is like second nature. So I will give it to him. I'm not that way. It's harder for me to write the story out. I do use modules. I'm more of a module man. I add things to those though. So it just depends, I feel like, who's DMing the game.
I think you make a very interesting point about them being one part and parcel of the same coin, two sides of the same coin, as you were. I think railroading and active storytelling are very similar and as pretty much as close together as you can think. It's about how you view it and how you do it as a DM, how the players
Mm,
view it, and how you approach it at the table as a DM. If you do it
yeah,
in a way which is negative, it's seen as railroading. If you've done it in a correct way, your players will see it as active storytelling. So I think
So here's the thing.
I was gonna
Right?
say you look like you had some thoughts there, but your brainwave hit you.
Yeah, like even if, like, let's say the players can tell they're being railroaded. I spoke to you about the idea that sometimes we might get a little iffy or hostile to the idea of being railroaded. But if you're a good DM and you're just telling them, hey, just go to this place, there's a story there that will add, there's a story beat you need to hit, and you'll have a fun time. Is it is it still forgivable?
This goes
that's
into
true.
another thing, right? Which is, as a DM, if you try and push something, your players will not want to do it. If
Yeah.
you
Oh
suggest
yeah.
something, they think you're up to something. So there's points at thoughts with this where it was like, do you want to check on the boat? Do you want to check on the boat? Do you want to check on the boat? And every time it was, yes, there was a reason for it, but not in the sense of it was nothing like super shady or anything like that. It was just to find out that the boat was gone, essentially. But because I'd mentioned it a couple of times, it was like, oh no, Ben wants us to do this way too much. Like we can't do this because the DM wants us to do this. So I think if you push it too much, it backfires.
But
So
here's
I
the
think
thing.
you have to try and be subtle about it still.
I'm not taking a stand here, but I just want to say that when Tubes was going on vacation or something like that, I knew Ben was going to write him out the story. And my plan, just a little bit of me, I was going to try to keep Tubes' character in combat when he's being taken away. that was that was my plan, even though I knew that he was gonna be written out for a little while, that he's gonna be kidnapped. But at that point, I'm like, I really want to see what happens if he has something prepped for it, like just to see the game.
That's funny.
And I
Players,
always do. Don't test me because I always fucking do. I know you guys too well at this point. I know you'll try some shit, so I do have backup plans most of the time.
But yeah, is that your guys' points? Is that your stands so far? It's
Yeah,
a
I
hard
think that's
one.
where
I'm
I
not gonna
stand. I
lie.
think that's where I stand on it is it's about how you approach it and how you tackle it as
oh
to
yeah,
how it's seen.
Yeah, it's how it's perceived.
Hmm
If it's
yeah.
railroading or if it's like you're just lightly nudging.
Because DMs don't use those terms as
No.
such. It's the players that will give you those terms based on how they feel about your campaign. But yeah,
But here's the thing. I have more notes. I have more points about Mike's than I do have of yours, Ben. Because you were playing a little like a quarter of both sides, just a
okay.
little bit. Um, man, might hit you with that written word essay like that
Mm.
opening statement was just strong about
I,
a derailed
I,
game.
I, I think I'd give this one to Mike. I love what Mike said. I just built upon
Hmm.
there. But I think Mike hit the nail on the head pretty
Yeah,
much
that was that
with,
was a hard that
with
was a
that.
hard opening statement over here. But
I
yeah, it
have
was
more
really
points.
he has a whole script written down on the side there. He was expecting this.
He's watching
Um,
Suits in the background, just making sure he's got his defense prepared.
Objection from that.
Yeah. Playing Ace Attorney on the
Yeah, it's
DS
great.
in the corner.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was. Yeah,
Go
you go,
on.
you go.
I was gonna say, real quick to go back to Wisdom's question. If you guys knew, Inside Out, the movie where they're
Mhm.
in the kit,
Hmm.
I'm
so
excited for
let's
the
just
sequel.
say, making characters. If my mind was Inside Out, it would be a horror movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be like
Bigger?
if you got all of the worst villains from horror movies and then put them in the Inside Out format where they run someone's brain.
Oh yeah, I love making bad guys.
Yeah.
I do enjoy making villains. I really do enjoy that. That's one of my favorite parts of DMing. Not that they
But
ever turn out to be as scary as I want them to be.
here's the thing
I
about the villains. We could dip our toes into it a little bit because we're all DMs here. Is to make them morally gray is really rough and some people even say not enjoyable for players. But if you
oh
make them
yeah,
overly evil and say they're catapulting babies on a raid just to mess with morale, then people will be like, oh, this guy's a.
oh,
Then your players start getting into it, or
oh
you make
that's
them overly
bad.
goofy evilly.
I do
I
that
think
daily in real life.
something I learned is the ones that scare the players the most and have the most impact are villains that are the most relatable. That
I was gonna
didn't
say the
co-
same thing.
that didn't come from tragic backstories or have like all these sad things happen to them. That there's some sense of even in what they're doing, you can see what they're trying to do. It's still that sort of thing of morally grey area of
Yeah.
trying to make someone that's like that the adventurers can still sort of see their point, even if they don't agree with it.
Mhm.
If you were just going, oh,
Yeah.
there's a dude catapulting babies off the roof, they're just going to be there like a shot. That guy's dead. But there's also no there. Why did they do it? Oh, it's just we didn't even get that guy's name. He was just catapulting babies off a roof. Do you know
That
what
was
I mean?
Craig.
Yeah, that was just Craig, fucking Craig. But I think having one of the reasons I think Clara is one of the most hated villains is because there's a sense and a level of she's evil. She's not sitting there being aggressively evil. She's evil to the core, and she shows it in a way that is very thought out, methodical, and she clearly has plans and points that she's put across that whether you agree with them or not, you can see some sort of reasoning for how she's got there. Do you know
Mm.
what I mean? I think there's a relatability factor there in the sense of she's more human than that.
Another thing with
I
Clara is, if you want to have like a villain segment here, I'll be quick, Mike. Sorry. Was that to make a villain even more hated is that they stagnate the hero's push to actually defeat them, or
Mm-hmm.
their goals. Just over time, it starts getting more and more frustrating to the point where players be like, when is this person going to show up again? I want that next beat to happen just so I can have that redemption of what happened last time.
Yeah, which very much did happen with Clara a lot of the time, was that thing of you knew she was going to show up, and every time that you did, the beat happened, and it was like, next time we're going to get her, and it was always something that meant that they weren't able to or that stops them. I do think that's very interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you try and make a villain scary, it's not going to be scary.
Or morally gray. It's a little rough. Just
Mm-hmm.
it might.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Mike. What was the thing?
I was gonna add. I agree with you on the morally gray can be hard and it can be boring. Like, but I like to push it further than that. I like to have a morally gray villain, and I had a concept for a campaign where there was a villain. Going back to like a concept like the movie Megamind, there's a
Mhm,
villain. He's a super villain, and the hero fights him day in, day out. But there's no conclusion. It's just the same thing over and over again. That's very boring. But then,
Mm-hmm.
what happens if, you have the heroes and you have a villain, and now there's an even stronger villain, like an actual, like pure evil villain enacting his own plans on top of that. So now, obviously, your characters have a choice, right? They either have to make the choice to fight with the villain
Mm-hmm.
and defeat the greater evil, or now they have to basically fight both
Yeah.
mhm.
because so you have giving the characters tough choices to make.
Mm-hmm.
That's the real BBEG. It isn't
Yeah.
it isn't the character you're fighting, but it's the choices that the characters make in
Yeah.
the game. I feel like that is the real, like, no matter if it's morally gray or pure evil. Like, I feel like pure evil alone also can be boring because it's a cliche, and
Mm-hmm.
it's fine in certain settings or for like a one shot or something like that. But if you have a pure evil villain, I feel like it's harder to keep them interested,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
as well as a morally gray. They need the choices to really
It's a
keep
tech.
the choices they make is what keeps them interested, not really the
Yeah,
villain itself.
I think make them question whether they've been the BBEG to other people with their choices, which is
yeah,
something again I did with Sunless. It was a constant thing of make your choices however you want to make them, but consequences will still happen in the world, and that it will be what helps drive that along and help
Uh,
these things. I definitely think player choices is a good shout for a BBEG as well.
I think just
Yeah.
to wrap it up is just
Mhm.
solid. You know, the goals of the villain doesn't have to be either pure evil or just morally gray. I think at the base of it, it just has to be understood, and I think that's when the
Yeah.
players make their own
Yeah.
choice. Like that's the dealio, and we're gonna play our characters. We're gonna play our characters as
Mm,
is.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a good one to top it off with talking about villains. Are they playing the outro to Cheers? Yeah, they are. Just
Is I thought you were playing the Naruto music.
no, no. Mike recommended the
No,
outro to Cheers.
That's,
It was
okay,
Dark
that's good to know.
Actor 4.
Yeah, he took the what was it?
The
The
Naruto
DJ.
music was a bop. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It was.
Just mix that with the Cheers music.
Yeah.
So now it's like
You've got
Japanese music behind the Cheers theme song.
yeah,
Alright.
you've got so much editing to do for this
You
week.
took the DJ about like 10 gold just for those two songs, so we played together.
Yeah.
But yeah, good times, boys. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
thank you very much, Mike.
It was exciting to finally have you
I
on.
know.
Your second face reveal, technically.
Hey,
Hey,
I hope it went well. I appreciate being on. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was.
it was a lot of fun. We had fun having you on. We'll have to have you again at some point to go over
I
some.
could talk about this shit for days.
Yeah, we know. Trust us, we're aware. Um, yeah, I think that's it for this week. Yeah, not sure who we'll have on next week just yet, but we will let you know. Other than that, it's closing time, so let's head out.
Yeah, good times, guys. We'll see you all next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Peace.
You guys are a good one.